Oh, I'm already choking laughing. That's a good start, isn't it? Good evening, UK Crime Book Club. I am here with Christie and Rosie. And Christie, happy publication day.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed that bottle of Moe. I'm assuming you've not drunk it yet, or are we in for a real treat with you tonight?
No, I'm saving it because the family's arriving tomorrow, and then the next day I've got my in-person lunch, so I figured I'll share it. I'll be
Well,
nice.
introduce yourselves, show off your books, and then let's talk about them. So, Christie, do you want to go first?
Oh, okay. My book is The Raven's Mark, and it's a book about a detective that goes out to a case where there's a teenage girl that's been murdered, and she's got the brand of a raven on her shoulder. It's been seared into her skin, and it's linked to a previous case that she worked as a cold case 2 years previously, where the victim survived but remains in a coma, and then she's thrown into the investigation that turns out to have a link to her, and that's all I'll say for now.
It's all you can say. Rosa.
It's all
I'm Rosie Walker. I'm the author of 2 novels that are published at the moment. The first came out in 2020 and it's called Secrets of a Serial Killer. And it's set in Lancaster, and it is the story of a serial killer who's operating out of a derelict mental hospital. And it takes place over 3 days, and it's quite tense. And then my second book is called The House Fire, and it came out in January this year, and it's about a serial arsonist and people trying to solve that case through the medium of making a documentary about the fires that have been set across a number of generations.
I have to ask, you've both got such unique ideas here. How on earth did this start? I don't even know where to begin with it, because I really can. Hello, everyone who's already said hi. We really don't want to give anything away, but they're so juicy. They're such good books. You really just get gripped and drawn into both of them with everything that's happening. Where did you come up with the ideas? But be aware of not giving spoilers away. No pressure. Christie, do you want to go first? Yeah.
Oh, me. Okay. I'd already written a standalone book, and this was the next one that I wanted to do because I wanted to write from a detective's point of view. Because secretly growing up, I always kind of wanted to be a detective. Actually, scratch that. When I was in high school, I wanted to be an FBI agent because I was mad into the X-Files. So this gave me the opportunity to play around with being detective. I gave myself a great base knowledge by doing a lot of courses, reading a lot of books and things like that on various things like crime scene forensics and whatnot. And then the idea came to me of a brand that would link more than one case, and this haunted female detective that would be quite diverse, with a diverse team that sort of reflects society. Well, does reflect society.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have this brand mean something, but when I first wrote the book, there was no raven. That came later when I did research and redrafted and implemented the raven into the book in the way it is now.
I can't imagine it without it.
No, at first it was a brand, and I knew there was going to be a link, but I didn't put the link in until I redrafted. The first draft of the book, it came like magic. I wrote it in 3 weeks. It just flowed. I don't know how it happened, but it just did. It just came out of me. Beth came alive. The characters came alive, and I felt like I was almost the medium between them and the page. And then afterwards, it was sort of structuring it correctly and tying up loose threads and inserting the raven and its meaning. And then obviously once I won the Joffrey Books Prize and the editor came into it, then it was about tidying everything up and amalgamating what was 3 characters into 2 and things like that. They really polished it up and with me and got it to the stage that it's at now.
Rosie?
Where I get my ideas. So similar to Christie, like going back to what I was interested in when I was really young was stuff like the Famous Five and secret passageways and derelict buildings and anything that kind of was a little bit secretive and like just had a hidden dimension to it. I was just fascinated by. And then I was trying to think of an idea for a short story when I was talking to my friend about how you should really write what you're interested in, you know, what you're like, really tap into the things that drive you. And I was like, well, if I was going to do that, I'd be writing a story about a serial killer and he'd be in like a derelict mental hospital. Why aren't I writing that? And then, so that was how Secrets of a Serial Killer came to be, was just the setting came first, this huge derelict asylum. And it just, because I just explored a building like that in Lancaster when I was at university there, and it just stuck in my mind for 10 years after it, because while I was trying to break into this derelict mental hospital, got through the fence, and then out of nowhere, this security guard just comes up and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, no, we were miles away from the main building, like in the middle of some trees. I have no idea how he knew. And I had no idea why they would have security cameras on a building, on like such a remote part of a building. And that kind of lodged in my mind. And I was like, there's a story here. But it was another 10 years before I properly started to write that one, which really was tapping into like my darkest and most the things that really interest me about people who are kind of beyond your understanding. You know, I'm not a serial killer, I'm not an arsonist. I would love to understand what makes those people do what they do, and I think part of writing about them is kind of exploring that element of humanity that you just can't, you're never going to do yourself, you know. So you're just like, well, if I put myself in that person's shoes, what do they do? And then with the house fire, I read a series of articles written in, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, about an arsonist called Thomas Sweat, who had written to a journalist and explained the origins of his serial fire raising, including like what had motivated him and his first fire, the fires that he continued to set, why he did it, and eventually the one that had caused him to be caught. And I just thought that was so interesting, hearing that through in the words of somebody who'd chosen to do that. And that became a short story, similar to what Christie said of like, it wrote itself. That short story just kind of came out of me. And then eventually that became The House Fire, which does have sections that are like in the mind of an arsonist.
See, every single wannabe writer sat watching this and I was thinking, well, what really gets me going? What really interests me, in hopes that this book is just going to fly out of them. But with both of the books, as soon as you start to read, you really write in there with the characters. You've got to know them really quickly, and how they steer the story. Did you know the characters really well before you started to write? Did you know how they were going to steer things, or were you literally just in the flow of it and these characters just wrote themselves?
For me, I would always classify myself primarily as a pantser, so I write by the seat of my pants. Since I've been doing the standalones that are quite complicated and they go over timelines, I've had to get to grips a little bit more with planning. And I did an online course with Alexandra Sokoloff that was absolutely brilliant and really helped me with that. But with the Raven's Mark, I literally just had this idea of these characters and then I let them write themselves. And as I went through and things like certain appearances, certain characteristics started to come to light, then I delved a little bit more into the character and I might pull back and do a bit of that. But it was more on the second draft that I then sort of did character profiles and interviewed my characters, because I realized that it was going to be a series and I wanted to make sure that continuity was on point. So basically you want to know things like if they were going to have tea or coffee and how they would take it, if they went to a restaurant, what would they order, just really random questions, and put yourself in the mindset of the character and answer the question, and then you feel like you get to know that character on a really deep level and you instinctively know how they would react in any given situation. And that's how I write.
And
I like the idea of the interview. Sorry. Yeah, go on, Rosie.
I'm the opposite of Christie again, which is so funny. Like, so I don't tend to interview my characters or make character profiles. I just kind of feel my way into the story and eventually kind of have these ideas in my head of who these people are, but don't tend to write it down. But then with the book that I'm currently working on, what I've done is I've picked famous people who I feel like resemble those characters, and then I've assigned a couple of traits to each character, and that's the extent of what I've done. But I can see them all in one place now, and that really helps when I'm kind of writing a scene about one of them. I'll pull up their picture, and there's like, oh, there's that nurse from Grey's Anatomy. Okay, so in Grey's Anatomy she's like this. Is she like this in my book? And like that kind of thing, and just ascribing characteristics to someone who I almost feel like I know from TV or from a film, and stealing their character and putting them in this horrible situation that I've concocted for them is helping quite a lot. Because I think Christie's done it right. I do think you should know your characters very well, because the best stories are character driven and consistent with their characters. And I think holding everything in your head, although it has worked for me in the past, I don't know if it's the best way of doing it. So I think I will be interviewing my characters from now on.
Especially if you ever write a series, that's when you've really got to do that, because you've got to have the longevity as well.
Oh my word, you are not making it sound any easier either way. It just sounds like it's such a hard thing to do. You make it look easy, the pair of you, but the actual process of it must just be something else. Donna wants to know, Christie, if you had a good publication day, how worn out are you? And Rosie, I'm going to ask you about, I know obviously yours isn't today, but I'm going to ask you to think back to the House Fire publication day, and we're going to ask what you did for that day. So, Christie, you've go on, you answer.
My day's been absolutely manic. I didn't sleep at all last night. I was like a kid on Christmas.
I did notice you were on Facebook quite late.
Yeah, because I literally did not sleep. I suffer with on and off insomnia, and I had that last night, so I didn't sleep at all. So then I gave up at about 4:30 and got up, and my phone was already pinging with messages and things, believe it or not. And then it was keeping on top of all the social media stuff, seeing my book rather suddenly go up the Amazon charts and thinking, oh my God. And then I went into Annick and I was signing books at the Accidental Bookshop. And then I went for a meal to celebrate and came home, and here we are. So yeah, it's been a really, really busy day, but really good.
Rosie?
My publication day for the House Fire was really strange, and I don't recommend doing what I did, which is I went over to, so it came out on the 6th of January, and I was supposed to be just back from a trip to California to see my husband's family, because my husband's from California. Instead, we caught COVID and got stuck in California. So on publication day, I woke up at about 4 a.m. California time, because they're 8 hours behind, and was like trying to like retweet stuff on and post about publication day in like what felt like the middle of the night California. And then my lovely mother-in-law made a cake which had the book cover of the House Fire on the cake, which was absolutely amazing. And it was like, it really made in a kind of strange and unplanned publication day that we hadn't really expected. It made everything feel really special and nice, was having this cake with my book cover on it. But the next book, I'll have a more typical publication day, like Christie did today, and go and sign books and celebrate and things like that.
Laura says she tries not to assign actors to what she reads after casting Ian Glenn and Keeley Hawes in one book. It made Ian's character's death scene particularly gruesome. That's a really interesting way of looking at it, not picturing somebody early on, because then you don't know if they're going to be killed off. Never thought of it like that. I'd have always thought, I don't really assign famous people to books. Do either of you do that? Have you got ideas for if it was developed in some way, or have you got somebody that you kind of thought of while you were writing the books?
I've actually been asked this in interview questions from I think it was Jaffe Books, and they asked me who I would choose if I could choose any actor to play Beth Fellows, my lead, I suppose. And I racked my brains and I couldn't think of anybody. I ended up saying Dominique Provost-Joly because it was the only actor that I could think of who sort of had mixed race, mixed heritage, and might somewhat fit the bill, because for the life of me, I just couldn't think of anyone. I think Beth is so alive in my brain, and she looks a certain way and is a certain way, and I can't imagine any actor being that person. So if ever it came to that, I think I'd step back and let somebody else make those decisions. I just don't think I'd feel comfortable doing it.
Rosie?
I hadn't done it till my current book that I'm working on, which is the 4th one. And like Christie before, I kind of had very concrete ideas about who these characters were, and when people asked me, couldn't really match that idea with anybody that I knew, like from TV. But then with my current book, I found it very, very helpful, especially as like picking actors that I kind of fancy is quite fun, and being able to like describe their traits when I'm typing about them makes for quite fun writing.
See, now as we found out when I interviewed Louisa Scar last night, if they aren't in Frasier from 20 years ago, or The Five I've watched repeatedly, Homeland, I've just rewatched Downton Abbey on Netflix. I watch there's about 10 things that I'll just watch in a loop. Friends. I know people complain about Friends and it can be quite problematic, but it's also quite nostalgic for me as well. So I have no clue who anybody is. I know who Kimberly Hall is. Hawes. I've even got Keely Hawes. See, I'm not even getting a name right now. I did watch The Bodyguard that she was in, and I do think she's fantastic, and I've seen her in other things, but I just don't watch TV because I'm always reading for interviews. So people will talk about different actors and actresses, and I will sit here nodding and smiling, thinking, not a clue. No idea.
I'm kind of similar, and with the current book, I knew that one of my characters, I wanted her to be inspired by Emma Thompson, but I didn't know which era of Emma Thompson. It was more like, which Emma Thompson? So I just opened up Google image search and typed in Emma Thompson and just looked through pictures of her from like from her early 20s right up to now, and just kind of scanned them and was like, that one.
See, I think Emma Thompson, and all I can picture is her really going for it dancing at Adele did an ITV. Yeah, an audience with. I love those. Yeah. See, Emma Thompson, I know and love, so I can join you in that one. But I am kind of clueless. Not that anyone's going to be really surprised that I am quite clueless. How much fun is it writing the villainous aspects of the book? So my family were laughing at me today because they know that I'll be reading something, and there's some pretty grim things in the books, and I was sat eating my lunch and having a hot chocolate and just kind of reading, and it doesn't surprise anybody anymore. I think I've got a bit of a tough stomach. It's kind of most of the time I can just sit and do whatever I'm doing while I'm reading stuff. Have you got a titanium stomach, either of you? Are you do you have to kind of walk away from some bits, or do you just really have fun writing the villains? Christie, you look really horrified by me because you know exactly what I was reading.
No. I actually really enjoy writing the villains. I liked trying to get into that psyche because, like Rosie, I'm fascinated by the psychology of it and of this individual that you just think that is so far removed from anything I know. I want to understand that and sort of explore it a little bit. And yeah, I really enjoy writing all the gruesome stuff. I like writing it. I like reading it. I think the only books that really kind of turn my stomach, but I still love them, is Chris Carter's books, because they are really gruesome, but they're blooming brilliant, but they are gruesome. I think I may struggle to write some. Actually, no, I think I'd be fine writing stuff like that. But if I was watching it on TV and it's the sound of a broken bone, that's when I'd plug my ears. Can't stand the sound of it, but I could write it.
That's interesting. I think I probably couldn't watch certain things, but reading it, not a problem.
No.
I am a bit grim. I'm a bit grim, no pun intended. Rosa?
Researching I really enjoy, but I had to, particularly with serial killers, had to kind of have a curfew where I would stop researching at about 10 o'clock at night, because otherwise it would kind of infiltrate my dreams, and I didn't like that. But with writing, loved it, like putting myself in the shoes of this person. And what I did for Secrets of a Serial Killer, that one of the early drafts, the serial killer had a blog. He doesn't anymore, it's changed. He had a blog where he basically outlined every element of how to get away with being a serial killer. So there was things like I had a whole article about how to dispose of a body, how to kidnap somebody, how to drug somebody. And like, I wrote all of these articles in this man's voice, and like thousands and thousands of words, had them all in my first draft. And then when I was reading through it at a later stage, and I realized that every time I was reading the book, I would skip the articles. They weren't interesting to me. And I thought, well, if I'm skipping them, then a reader's going to be skipping them too, because they're not actually advancing the plot. They're just kind of adding a bit of flavor, and you can't have something that's adding a bit of flavor taking up that many pages. So I had to in the end, I deleted about 10,000 words from my book, which was all the blog posts, and then consolidated them into something that's similar to the How to Get Away with Murder blog, but is a lot more condensed and a lot more engaging, and actually is part of driving the plot. Because as everyone knows, everything you put down has to do good story work, and that was something I learned the hard way by just really enjoying being in the mindset of that person.
I was going to say, it must have helped with the writing of it, even though you kind of cut. 10,000 words is a lot to cut. But just having written that must have put you in that mindset so much more. Even if you had to cut so much and reword it, it's still not a waste, because you must have developed so much with it.
Definitely. And it did inform the story. When I kind of learned how to weave all of that into what was actually happening on the page, it became a better book because of it. And I think maybe with some writing exercises, you kind of have to get all that stuff out in order for the book in the end to be better.
Yeah, that's fair enough. At least it isn't a waste. That would be tragic. That would be awful. But
Definitely.
Not a waste at all. Is there anything with you both that you found has been surprising coming to the industry? So either as a writer or about publishing in general. Is there anything, good or bad? It could be a really good thing. Is it how you expected it to be, or are there things that you've learned that have surprised you? So, Christie, let's go back to you first.
Yeah. Well, I suppose for me, initially, it's that I never expected somebody like me to ever get a publishing deal or an agent. I always thought that the writers were sort of middle class, Middle England, white men sort of thing, or even white women, Middle England, middle class, but not somebody like me. So I'm very diverse, which is why Beth is very diverse, and my characters are. And I just really didn't expect it to be a door that was open to me. And I'm very lucky that I was wrong, and that the door was open, and it's edging further open, which is great. So that was a surprise initially. And then I think once you get those deals and you start working with an editor and you start working with your agent and all of that, everything's new to you if you've not done it before. And it's all a learning curve. It's a constant learning curve, and it's learning how to work with people to create the best work that you can in the end, and just nurturing those relationships. And for me, that was a constant surprise, and it still is, because I'm just learning how to navigate and how many different people there are within a publishing firm. If I send an email to one person, it could be the completely wrong person who doesn't deal with that aspect at all. And then you realize, oh my God, there's all these names I didn't even know, and I have no idea what they all do. And it's an immense undertaking to get a book out there, and there's so many people involved all the way down the line. And I think that was really surprising. I kind of just had this image in my head of an editor, an agent, and you, the writer, and that was it. But there's so much more to it. And that's been a big learning curve for me.
Rosie?
Sorry if I repeat anything Christie said. You guys cut off for a little bit during just about a minute ago. So if I looked a bit confused, that was why. I was like, where's everyone gone?
You didn't look confused, no.
But you're back. Things that surprised me about being published. Well, I am not speaking from my mansion currently. Sadly.
No Porsche in the driveway.
No, not yet. Anyway, you know, there's still time, but currently, it's I'm not in a mansion. Other things that surprised me. You don't really necessarily get to pick your book title, which really did surprise me, because I thought, you know, I'd hand it in and they'd be like, sure, we'll publish it with this title. And actually, like, the expertise that goes into selecting a title is quite impressive, and also has a lot to do with reader habits and marketing and what's popular and what's about to come out, what has already come out, and what people are searching for when they're looking for books. So like with my first one, Secrets of a Serial Killer, it was very much like, well, we want to get the words serial killer in the title because people look for that. And that was really, really interesting. And then similarly with book cover design, you don't really get that much of a say. And luckily, the designers that are behind these things are incredibly talented, and they will take like the whole massive novel and manage to distill all of these ideas somehow into this amazing, very, very clear image that somehow communicates what your book's about, which is amazing. But what they're also considering with these book designs is stuff like, if you're looking through the Kindle store on your Kindle, what's going to stand out? So like something like this stands out massively because there's loads of contrast, the letters are massive, like there isn't a lot of fiddly detail, because they don't, right now, the way that people buy books, they need to be able to see it straight away when it's on that screen, and that's how they decide what's going to work. And it's really clever and really interesting to learn about, but also like you kind of do have to be a lot more hands off in the publication process than you expect, because there are people who know exactly how that part of it works, and those people are not the writer, sadly.
I know that book covers and titles are a big thing for authors, because they might have a certain idea and maybe be quite frustrated that the title and the cover that's suggested isn't what they had in mind. They think it's too similar to other things that are out there, but this, you know, the people know what they're doing. They know how to sell the books. So I'd assume that if you absolutely despised something, that you'd have a bit of wiggle room in it, but that if it really wasn't that important to you and you just wanted to sell books and have people read your story, maybe the cover wouldn't be such a big deal to you. I don't know. Quite a tricky thing.
No, it's really important. I don't mind. I did get consulted, but it wasn't my decision, really. I just got consulted and said, yeah, I like that. No, I don't. But I'm very easy to please. They show me something. Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. I kind of choose it in the same way I choose my glasses when I go to the opticians. Yeah, they'll do. You know, they're fine. Or a pair of trainers. Yep, they're good. You know, I leave it to the experts. Oh, where's Rosie gone?
I don't know. She froze for a second, but I'm sure she'll be back. I am sure she'll be back.
There was one other thing that surprised me as well. It was that the charts in things like W.H. Smith are not genuine. I always thought that they were done sales based, and I've since learned, after going to Capital Crime and listening to a panel, that it's not done that way, and that was a shocker for me. That was one of the biggest surprises.
I know there were some articles that did the rounds. Hi, Rosie. I know there were some articles that did the rounds where people were really surprised about just how some of these selections in the bigger bookshops, the chains, are made, and how it looks like you assume that they're in a certain order because of the amount of sales they've had, which isn't always the case. It is sometimes the case, but not worrying too much about that.
Waterstones apparently is genuinely based on sales, so that's good to know. I mean, to be honest, I'll either like a book or I won't, and I don't generally go off the chart position. I tend to go off what author it is, because I know what authors I like, and then what authors are similar to them, and you know, that's how I choose. I don't choose based on the chart anyway. But can you see Rosie? Because I can only see a blue screen.
I can see you, Rosie. Yeah. Can you see and hear us? Are we moving fine for you?
I can for now.
That's so strange. Oh, no, she's back.
I'm back to.
So while we're on that subject, let's talk about who you've enjoyed reading recently. Are there, so Kaz calls them your shut up and take my money authors, the ones that you see the name and you just will buy anything by them. I'm quite lucky and unlucky in other respects that my reading list is pretty much set out for me. If I can squeeze in other books, I will, but I read for the author interviews, which means I have such a diverse range. It's fantastic. It's really easy for me to discover people that I might not have found otherwise. So who have you been reading? What have you enjoyed? Really put you on the spot. Sorry.
Oh no, I've got a massive list. Any Lisa Jewell, always. Any Dorothy Coomson, always. I've read them all, of both. Any Diane Chamberlain, and she's a little bit different, but she's erring more towards crime mystery as well now, and her books are incredible. Olivia Kiernan, Liv Kiernan, Fiona Cummins, When I Was 10. Oh my God, the description's incredible. God, I could look around and I could just go on and on because, to be perfectly honest, I read a lot. Jodie Picoult is another one. Her books are a bit different. They're not necessarily crime-based, but I love her books as well. I do read a bit of variety myself. So yeah. But there's definitely a strong list of authors whose books I will buy every single time.
Seeing as you've just mentioned Dorothy Coomson, I'm just going to say I keep meaning to message her because about a week ago, I was off to go and grab a shower, and my phone was on charge. And because of something that happened with Dorothy's phone, where it set on fire while it was on charge, and her husband stopped it straight away. I can't remember exactly what he did, but he reacted really quickly and stopped it becoming an issue. That has always stuck in my head, and I never leave my phone on charge if I'm out of the room. Luckily for me, I didn't, because I'd bought a new I had a cable, but I needed a new plug. And I remembered to go and turn it off. It was a couple of years ago that I'd read this, and it always sticks in my head. And as I went to turn it off, just before I was leaving the room, I leaned across it and I could smell burning plastic. So we've returned the plug. But yeah, Dorothy Coomson may have stopped my house burning down while I was in the shower.
Wow.
So,
good one, Dorothy.
Yeah. So I
good.
keep meaning to message her and tell her, but there's so many things going on that you kind of forget things. But yeah, there you go, Dorothy. You stopped my house burning down. Cheers to you.
Well, I'll pay attention to that from now on as well. I've never even thought of
and
it.
hers was an iPhone and an iPhone charger. It wasn't like a cheap charger or anything. It wasn't. And I can't remember what I don't know what make my phone is. I'm really not that good. I know it works. I'm just getting used to it. But yeah, I hadn't noticed that it smelled. It was a fairly new plug, but it had been fine. So thank you, Dorothy Coomson and Mr. Coomson.
Yes, thank you. Although it's scaring me a little bit now.
Don't leave stuff plugged in. I don't even leave the microwave plugged in. I don't trust it if I'm out the room. So, Rosie, tell us who you've been reading.
At the moment, I have been really, really enjoying Gillian McAllister. I know that she's like everybody's reading Gillian McAllister at the moment, and I've been catching up on some some of her older backlog books, and she's just absolutely amazing, and like almost intimidatingly so. And like as a writer, when you're reading these things and you're thinking like, A, how can I write like this, and B, why should I carry on writing when somebody else can do it so much better than I ever will be able to? And also like trying to dig into like how she's doing it, how she's structuring these amazing books, and how she's because they're not quite crime, they're always kind of normal people in incredibly difficult situations, and kind of classify them as like moral dilemma thrillers because they're not quite crime. But I find that element of like, this could happen to me because it's a completely normal character.
Yeah.
It was just like through a set of circumstances has been catapulted into this incredibly harrowing scenario. And the way that kind of there's all these secrets and lies and backstory that are kind of trickled through it, and then you can kind of see them starting to unfurl as the book continues. It's just so clever. So she is definitely like, every book she's ever written, I'm going to study it forensically so that I can steal the inner core of what's going on, because she's so clever. And then the other writer who I will absolutely read everything by is Taylor Jenkins Reid. And she's not crime. It's like kind of historical fiction with a bit of
read any. I am aware of people being big fans.
I think she's a really interesting writer. Like, the amount of research that goes into her work, and the depth of character, and the kind of the different eras that she taps into, and the range of scenarios, and the expertise that goes all on behind it all. Like, even in her last one, Carrie Soto, I can't remember the title. Carrie Soto, the most recent one. It's all about tennis. And it's about a tennis champion. I'm not into sport at all. Like, as soon as I see a word relate to sport in a synopsis of a book, I'm just like, nah, not for me. But because it was Taylor Jenkins Reid, I read it anyway, and I was glad I did, because she's such a fantastic writer. She even manages to make sport interesting to me. So.
I've actually got a book to read called Running and Jumping by Stephen Keeder. It's not a crime book. And it's about two athletes at the Olympics and their lives leading up to it. And it's really about one of them. And I can't wait to read it. It's just, when do I find the time to fit something else in? It's just, it is so tricky to do. It really is. Donna's saying crikey to my phone story. And Michelle Kidd's saying she's going to unplug her phone tonight. I would, Michelle. I actually do go and check that my kids have unplugged the phones, before bed, because it freaks me out, the idea of it anyway. But yeah, now it's almost like I want to wave the plug at them and say, look, smell, this is why we unplug things. I'm going to ask everybody else what they've been reading at the moment as well. So we've got prolific readers in the group. It's really it's really so many recommendations that you could never run out of things to read. You really couldn't.
I'm actually reading Gillian McAllister at the moment. So when you said it, I was like, oh yeah, I'm Gillian McAllister. I'm Liz Nugent. I could just go on. But yeah, I'm reading that night. It's brilliant. It's really, really good. Absolutely fascinating.
What are you both working on at the moment? I know, Rosie, you've said book 4. What are you both working on at the moment? And can you tell us about the most recent scene you've written without giving anything away? Ooh. Is that possible? I like to ask this, but I'm aware that it's sometimes a bit of a tricky one to answer.
Well, I have just sent my second standalone off to my agent. So the last thing I wrote was the ending of that. So no, I can't really tell you about that. And what I'm currently working on is basically, I'm just planning in my head what I'm going to do when I redraft my first standalone, Whittingham. I've got a very clear idea now of what I'm going to do. But last night when I was trying to sleep, I was plotting in my head my third standalone, which is coming after I've redrafted Whittingham, after I've corrected the things that need to change in book 2 of Beth Fellows because of what's happened in book 1, and after I've written the third Beth Fellows. So I'm already planning the standalone that's way down the queue when I should have been sleeping. So, but that's just how my brain works. I plot all the time. I'm always plotting.
Rosie?
That's impressive, Christie. I think about stories while I'm trying to sleep, because I don't sleep very well either. And like, as I'm trying to fall asleep, I'm like, well, don't think about how you can't sleep. Think about what's going to happen next in your book. So my most recent book is number 4. And what I wrote in the last scene was my protagonist is in a situation that she feels is a dangerous one, and she has to choose between whether she stays with her children to protect them or whether she goes and tries to help her husband.
I'm going to ask you something based on something that Louisa Scarr said in her interview last night. She there were some scenes in one of her books that she didn't think would make it past her editor. and then there were some things that she might have put in just to see if she could get it past them. Have either of you done that? Is there anything that you thought, I'll put that in, but there's no way that's going to stay in? Or is there something that you didn't expect to be cut, that was, or, you know, somebody said to you, maybe look at that again?
Well, there's always going to be things that you're editor spots that you don't, where you might have said the same thing in two different ways with a bit of a gap between, and then you've thought, oh yeah, I completely skimmed over that because I've read it 1,000,001 times now. So yeah, that happens. Obviously, that's what your editor's there for, and grateful to him. But with regards to trying to sneak things past, no, not really. I just trust my editor to know what's for the best, and if I disagree, I'll explain why I disagree, and sometimes whatever I've come up with initially stays, because I'm like, no, I actually really like that description. You might not get it, but I know what I'm saying and I like it. And yeah, and that did happen actually with the Raven's Mark. One description that a lot of people, my test readers, really loved, and then there was one person who read through it. It wasn't my main editor, but she didn't quite get it. But I argued for it to stay, and it stayed, and I really like it.
I'm just getting a phone call from Guy Hale, who clearly does not realise that I am live. So I've just literally dropped him a message saying I'm live! ! So no, Guy, I won't be answering the phone right now. He's been fantastic. I was ill a couple of weeks ago, had quite a scary time, but he's been checking in on me every single day. He's a really good friend. So yeah, it's been really nice. Rosie, have you frozen?
I thought that was just for my benefit that she'd frozen like that.
No. Not that one. So how many of Beth's team are we going to see again? Because you've said that you're going to, obviously we're going to see them again. There are going to be certain characters that come back. Are you keeping the bulk of the team? Can I ask you that?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. All the team members that you've met, pretty much, they all stay. Yeah. And so does Aunt Margie and, you know, other characters that, yeah, they'll be explored more, like the not so nice characters and things like that. And different aspects of different characters' lives will come into play as well. Like in book 2, there's a little bit more detail about Millie's family. They come into it. And you might learn a little bit more about Aunt Margie as well you do in the second book, and it's just slowly developing the characters over time so that hopefully the readers will get to know them through the series. And I think I really love the characters, and I think there's things to explore with all of them. And they've all got quite kind of an interesting past, and yeah, I think they're quite fascinating in their own right. Is Rosie back?
You are back. Oh.
Oh no, she's gone again.
Never mind. So how many books have you got in mind for Beth? Have you got kind of a certain amount in your head, or are we just keeping her for a long, long time?
I know that the idea with Joffy and everybody else is it's to be a long-running series. That's the plan. I've already written the second book. I need to adapt a few things simply because of the edits from book 1 having a knock-on effect, but they're not major adaptations, and then obviously go through the editing process as usual. And I have the idea in mind for book 3. And then from then on, I'll just see where I go with it.
So, Rosie, series versus standalones, what are your plans? How many things have you got juggling in your mind at the moment?
Mine are all standalones. I think I haven't been able.
Fancy series?
I don't think I do. I think when I finish a book, I feel like I've spent enough time with those characters, and like maybe I'm just not picking the right celebrities. I don't know. I think if there was scope for a series, I would be interested. But at the moment, my plots seem so kind of contained within that story that I haven't yet thought of one that would work.
But that's the thing, isn't it? This is the beauty of being a writer, because you might do series, you might do standalones, you might do a combination of them. But there are some authors who, you know, have done really well just by writing standalones, and some have done really well just by writing series. So it's the beauty of it. There's no kind of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. There's no
strict rule.
Yeah, that'll do. Thank you. I know it was, I can't remember the word. Words are not good for me at the moment, which is not helpful considering my my chosen career. Donna says, oh, she's going getting a flu jab. So she'll be looking for signed books at Newcastle Noir. So, yeah, she'll be. So I hope you're okay, Donna. And she's going to look to getting books from both of you and having some signed, so that's good. Laura's saying both authors' works sound like my sort of books. Definitely be ending up on my TBR pile. I'd say, Laura, me and Laura have got quite similar taste. So I can wholeheartedly recommend these books as something that she's really going to enjoy. I think we've lost Rosie again. The technical side of tonight is just so much fun. So tell me about...
And I don't know how to answer on the chat, you know. When people are writing things, I can't do a text thing.
No, you won't be able to. It just comes up so that we can, so that they can ask us questions or say hello or make comments, and then we verbally answer them. So don't worry at all.
I just didn't want them to think I was just ignoring them. I've read all the comments. I just can't reply. That's it.
No, it's absolutely fine. So events that you're doing, you've talked about some things you've got coming up. So tell us where people can actually come and meet you.
Oh, okay. Well, tomorrow I'm doing an online live book launch from 7 till 9, and there's bookish giveaways, and it's free, so you can join from anywhere. I do have a launch at Berwick Library on Friday at 7 till 8. And then I'm doing a talk at New Begin Library on Monday. And then on the 11th of December, I'm doing Newcastle Noir. So that's so far this side of Christmas. But yeah, I'm doing a panel on the 11th. So all those places.
I feel like we've got a minute, so let's dig into the Raven's Mark a bit more. So you start with quite an intense prologue. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
The prologue is it's a section nicked from further on in the book, if you will. So it's something that happens to Beth, the main character, as the case has progressed. And then when we go into chapter 1, we're back at the start of what sent her down that path. And she's sat in a restaurant, and the waitress has brought over a package, and she's opened it, and it's a taxidermy raven, and it's ticking. And it sort of ends on the note of she's going to let the bomb explode because the only other option is to sacrifice somebody else close to her, and she's not prepared to do that because she knows this person will do it. And it's this moral dilemma of do I suffer the consequences along with the strangers in this restaurant, or do I sacrifice someone close to me, someone I love? And then that prologue ends, and we go into chapter 1 where she's going out to the first case.
So Rosie, your prologue is quite intense as well, in a completely different way than Christie's is. So do you want to talk to us just about how the house fire opens?
Yes. Can you hear me okay? I'm sorry that I keep popping in and out. So the house fire...
As long as you come back, we're good.
Sorry, say that again.
As long as you keep coming back, we're fine.
I will. My Wi-Fi's dropped and I'm now on my phone and I can't hear that much, but I can, if I listen really hard, I can. So the prologue of the house fire, I'm still refreshing the page on my laptop as well to try and get back in on the actual laptop. The prologue of the house fire is from the perspective of a child who is watching somebody watching their father attack their mother through like a cupboard door. And I think one of the things that I wanted to kind of explore there was how things are a lot more scary if they're at a remove. You know, it's if you're watching from a cupboard it's more scary than if you're in the room. And I think starting the book with a bang, so to speak, was quite felt quite important. But at the same time, when I've since read that prologue out loud at like spoken word nights and stuff, it feels a lot more shocking to read it out loud to an audience than it did to write it when it was like just me in front of my computer. And I found that to be quite interesting, that like when you can feel an audience's reaction, you can feel the impact of what you've written a lot more.
Interesting. They're both very tense. They're both incredibly tense openings for different reasons, and you're waiting to come back across it in the book, and you're looking at what leads up to it. I'm really hoping, Rosie, that you can hear me.
I can.
So really trying to enunciate. But were the prologues the first thing that you wrote, or were you writing and then you came and added that to, you know, to go back to where you were up to? Which way round did you do it? Was the prologue first, or was chapter 1 first and then writing and then coming back to
it? For me, chapter 1 came first, and then I thought, no, I need to go in, like Rosie said, with a bang right initially. And so I pulled something from what I decided would be further on in the book and put that as the prologue. And I wanted the reader to question what on earth would bring this detective to this point where this is how she felt and this is how she reacted in this situation. So then take it from the start. But yeah, no, I didn't write it first. It was what I decided to put in so that I could grip the reader right away.
Rosie?
Yeah, same for me. And I think what's interesting about what Christie said was that I think when you write linearly and you take something from the middle of the story and put it as the prologue, what you have is like the richness of the writer knows the characters they're writing about in that scene. You know, they know there's a lot of questions for the reader just based on the fact that the reader's missing the context from the characters that came before that. And so it's a really nice way of kind of teasing one of the core conflicts is by moving something from the middle of the book right to the beginning. So I really like what Christie said there, and I've done that in my third book, in a way that I think is really interesting too. And then for me with the house fire, similarly to what Christie said, I started writing with chapter 1, and then I got about halfway through, and then the first line of the prologue just popped into my head in the voice of the character, and that was when I started to write the prologue. It was just like partway through writing the book and just skip back.
I like that. I like that you've got to know the characters and then thought, right, I've hit that point, that needs to go at the beginning now. Did that help you to finish the books? Having that in that place, Christie?
For me, it did.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry. For me, it did. Because I feel like it helps me to, when I'm trying to write the final scenes, it helps me to flick back to what is at the beginning and really revisit how the book opened to make sure that the beginning and the end kind of tie together, and that everything that you've introduced in the first page is kind of bookended and mirrored in the final pages.
For me, what I've sort of discovered to be my pattern of writing is that I'll get sort of 3/4 of the way through the book. I'll go right back to the beginning and read the whole thing again, and then I'm ready to write the ending because I've refamiliarized myself with everything, and the ending then just flows naturally. And then afterwards, on the second draft, third draft, whatever, that's when I perfect everything and make sure that everything links and everything's, like you say, mirrored, and that there's a resolution that feels satisfying. But obviously with the Ravensmark, it's a series, so the resolution, while being satisfying, leaves the door open for the second, third, and whatever book.
Now, you've both written about areas that you're familiar with. Is everywhere that's used a real place or based on a real place, even if it's not quite logistically the same? Have you both used places that the readers could actually go and visit if they wanted to?
Mainly, yes. having said that, I didn't want to set a grisly murder in someone's house. So certain streets and houses of murder scenes are not real. But then where the police station is based, that's invented because I invented the specific building that Beth works at, but I've placed it in a real place in Preston. So you could go to that part of the River Ribble and you would be in that area. And then when Beth's driving and it's describing where she's driving and everything, that's all real. So there is it is set in a real place. It's just that certain aspects of it are fictionalized to meet the needs of the story and to not upset anyone that lives in those houses.
Fair enough. Rosie?
Similar, actually. My first one, Secrets of a Serial Killer, set in Lancaster. So we've got a very northwest theme to our chat this afternoon. And while I was writing it, I did base the location in the derelict hospital. I based it on a real hospital called the Moore Hospital, which was standing empty when I lived there. And then when I started to do research into the history of that building and the history of a couple of other old hospitals that were in the area too, I joined a couple of Facebook groups that were of people who had worked there, who were sharing memories of the hospitals, or each one of them. And as I was looking through it and reading these people's memories, I thought, like, I don't think it feels very respectful to name my hospital after this place, which still has people who within living memory lived and worked there. Because there's a serial killer operating out of this building, and it didn't feel very sensitive. So at that point, I changed the name of the hospital. So it's still Lancaster, and it's still the same locations and similar buildings, and it's not a secret, but it just felt a bit more understanding of the fact that people lived there and people worked there not that long ago. And then with my second book, it's set in a fictional town and a fictional village in the county of North Yorkshire, but they're actually based on the town and the village where I grew up. So I grew up in a little village called Egton in North Yorkshire, and the nearest town was Whitby, and then the nearest bigger town was Scarborough. So Abbeywick and the other villages and stuff are all based in that little North York Moors area.
We are hitting 8 o'clock. That hour has absolutely flown. So give us a recap of the books and where people can buy them, and tell us how you're going to spend the rest of your evening. So, Christie, how you spend the final bit of publication day?
The rest of publication day is going to be watching a bit of TV and having a very early night because I didn't sleep. Yeah. So I've got a really busy few days ahead, so I really need to catch up on sleep. And if you want to buy it, it's The Raven's Mark by Christie J. Newport. You can get signed copies via Forum Books online. You can also get them from any other bookstore online, and Amazon. At the moment, it's 99p or free on Kindle Unlimited, and that's temporary, so take advantage. And that's it, really. I mean, if you want context, it's right there. Just look it up on Amazon.
Rosie?
And I am Rosie Walker, and I am the author of The House Fire and Secrets of a Serial Killer. Both are available in ebook, paperback, and audio from most retailers and online shops. And I hope, and you can find me on the normal social medias like Twitter and Facebook, and I have a website. And I think that's about it. The rest of my evening will be spent drinking wine and probably watching Love Island Australia, because I have not very highbrow entertainment habits.
Oh, yeah.
What can I say? All I do is rewatch Frasier and things that I've seen 1,000 times. But it's like chewing gum for the brain, isn't it? It's nice to, when you read such intense things and you're really engaged in plots, it's nice to just sit back and relax and enjoy something. Thank you both so much. Thank you to everyone who's joined in tonight. Yeah. And remember to unplug those plugs, everyone. And thank you both. I hope you both come back for future chats.
This has been so much fun. Thank you.
It has. Thank you. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Rosie. And thank you, everybody that's joined as well.